Hey everyone, thanks for checking in back over here at the channel. Today I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about Arken Optics digital day-night optics, and that's these Zuluses. This here is the standard Zulus, not the Zulus LRF, which is the laser rangefinder model. But I'm going to talk a bit about pros and cons related to using one of these digital day-night scopes. So let's get at it. Alrighty, now initially I intended to come up with an organized list talking about the pros and cons associated with using one of these Arkens. But I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to ramble along a bit and share with you guys my experiences of using these Zuluses on both centerfire rifles and rimfires, and my take of the pros and the cons, basically the things I like about using one of these digital day-night scopes and the things that I so much don't like, or the cons of it. Now, I've got both of the Arken Zuluses in possession. Now, this is just the standard model, which is the model without the laser rangefinder, and I've got the model with the laser rangefinder and the use of the ballistic applications mounted up on a centerfire, a 6.5 Creedmoor right now. It's also been on a 308. But let's get to it. What do I like about these things, and what do I find, not so much that I don't like, but maybe a barrier or a bit of a frustration with using one of these over, say, a standard rifle optic. I've got one of the SH4s on this Rear Precision 22 right here. Now, first off, what I'm going to go through is when you pick up a digital day-night scope, whether it's the Arken models, I've got a model by Sightmark, One Leaf, whatever brand you choose, there is definitely a learning curve to using one of these things over your standard optic. We know if we pick up the brand A, B, or C of one of these regular scopes, pretty much they work the same. You might have a little bit different click or something like that, but our turrets work the same. Our parallax works the same. On a lot of them, the illumination and everything else, it's just the same. There's not big learning curve. Now, using one of these is completely different. Now, I've been shooting content. I've been using these quite a bit, but I've had these for, it's going on a couple months now, and I'll get out and I'll do some shooting. I'll use them and I'll put them away and I'll be doing some other things, and I pull them back out and I sometimes kind of have to go back to the manual and look at some of the pages on things like the one-shot zero. If you don't do that all the time, you're going to have to kind of reference things on how to do that again. And the one-shot zero, that is one of the pros of this thing. But the learning curve, that's what I'm talking about right now. All these features, they are quite intuitive and easy to use, and a lot of them aren't something that you're going to have to use the manual. But there are a few things, especially like the ballistic application of loading and whatnot. So there's a learning curve with these. That's one of the cons that I feel. The other thing is the frustrations with Bluetooth and syncing to other devices and such. If you go through some of the social media stuff, you're going to find people having issues getting these things linked up to their phone. They're able to see what's going on, but they're not able to get the recording, or vice versa. They got recording, and just odd hassles and things that can happen when you're using a digital device. I was using some other shoot-through Tacticam type scopes before. I also use some GoPro setups, and as well with those, there's always that issue with getting things synced up. The learning curve with keeping up with how to do that and quickly do that is one of the other barriers. Now, also related to that, but more of a positive, a lot of people purchase these things and they really like the ability to record the shots, and for me that is one of the primary reasons that I think this is a great for a hunting application or a teaching tool. But if you have this optic and you've got it mounted up on a firearm and you're out hunting, there's some thought that needs to go in, some preparation, some pre-planning for this thing to be effective. Are you going to leave it on? Do you have enough battery life to just leave it on? Are you going to set this thing up to go to sleep? Is it going to be sleeping on you? Or are you going to shut it off and remember to turn it on? If it's off and you go to turn it on, You know, are you shooting at an animal that you're going to have enough time for this thing to fire up and you get it back all ready to go to make that shot? It's another barrier involved with using this and having access, in my mind, to that recordability that you get with the Arken Zulus or any of the other optics. Brings me to the other barrier. Now, I'm getting a little bit older. I've got a gray beard going on. I'm wearing contacts right now. You'll see in some of the content I'm wearing glasses. So my vision, it's on the downswing. Now, these are set up in first focal plane. And, you know, for me, the Zulus, I find the reticle is quite fine. You know, here I'm squinting like I'm looking through the thing. But I find the reticle pretty small. You know, my son has shot through this thing and he doesn't have an issue, but as an older shooter, I would like to see the reticle a little bit bigger, or the option through the software to possibly set this thing up for a second focal plane. And I know some of the digital day-night scopes you can do that. So here I'm rambling off about some of the cons of this. Let's switch things over and, you know, what are the cool things with having this? Well, first off, this thing is a day-night scope, and that's probably why most people, or maybe half the people, are interested in this thing. So this is infrared. This is not thermal. But what I found is with this illuminator that's on here, I can illuminate with just a little bit of starlight, a little bit of moonlight. I'm reaching out past 400 yards and really able to see deer-sized animals. Now, much beyond that, the focus and the kind of the pixelated view starts to really come into play, and I wouldn't be shooting that far at night. But that's the cool thing. We've got an affordable infrared optic. That's the cool thing with the Zulus. The next thing is the size of this thing. Now, compared to the one-leaf one that I've done some review on, and even the sight mark, which is by no means humongous like that one leaf, this thing is tiny in comparison. These batteries that most people are familiar with, you know, you can just look at this thing. It's not much bigger than the batteries that are going in this tube on this side. The other barrier with size would be the mount. That's one of the complaints that people have, and in fact, that's a complaint that I have, is this mount sets up quite high for setting this thing up, in my opinion, on the centerfire rifles. Now, I've got some rifles like this Ruger Precision here that you can raise up your cheek rest, but if I were to put this thing on here, I really have to have this cheek thing, you know, all the way up to get a solid, holding it weird here, but to have a solid plant and get a real good eye box through this. So that's something else, and I do believe there are some different mounts in the works. So that one may not be a long-term con with this. Giving us some more thought, features that I like about it, the focusability of this thing is really quick and easy, but then again, it's something you do need to keep familiar with on how to get to this and what it does and everything else. As far as other barriers, I'm not finding much. The only barrier that I'm coming into is some discrepancies with the Ballistic software. And I know Arken's still working on that stuff, and I've been in touch with them a bit with that. But the Ballistic software that I had with this thing, with it zeroing it in at 100 yards with a 6.5 Creedmoor and a 308, I have some Ballistic software information from a different application, a different brand that I really won't name right now. I can put that in the comments if you're curious about it. But that was all accurate. I had accurate ballistic coefficient information, velocity, and everything else, and a really good setup going for my rifles. Plug that same data over with this, and I was not getting the same impact. So there's some adjustments that I had to make to get this thing to work. And again, if you've got questions on that, I could tell you where I'm at with that in the comment section. So that is another a barrier of working through those things. But in general, are these things, you know, is this for everyone? I'm going to go on a limb and say no. I'm going to say that traditionally most people are probably going to really want to stick with their standard optic, an SH4, an EPL4, EP8, EP5, I mean LH4. There's just the Arkens I'm naming here, versus just relying on one of these for all of your shooting. You're at the mercy of battery life. Now, I haven't had much of an issue. I've had these batteries lasting quite a long time. You know, I can't really tell you how many minutes or hours because I haven't really paid much attention to that. But with all of the shooting, the content creating I'm doing, I've only had one of these things die completely on me one time. Now, with that said, I do shut the optic off. I don't just leave it on like some people may do if they're out on a hunt. Brings me to the use of this. Who is this designed for the most? Is this a tactical scope? You know, you could probably use it for that. You can use any of them for anything. But I think this thing is really geared more towards night use. And, you know, like the predator hunter. You have, you know, white-tailed deer hunters and things like that. We're not allowed to use these. But I know, like, some states for pest use and predator hunting, the air gun guys, and a lot of cool footage of those guys shooting rats and things like that with these things. That stuff is awesome. And if I had more of them vermin around here, I'd definitely be getting me an air gun and having one of these on it. But that's what I think these things are marketed to. I don't see this as a tactical self-defense go-to type scope. I see this thing as an option for the predator hunters, for the air gun guys, and as a teaching tool. That's what I'm finding a huge thing with this. If you've got some people out and you want to be able to monitor what they're aiming at, you want to teach them a bit about holdovers. You know, these Zuluses, you can switch this thing over to the mill or the MOA reticle in here, and you can see that Bluetooth right onto the telephone screen. So you can have that phone out there, and you can be talking to that shooter and teaching people about holdovers. So that is a great thing, as well as the fun stuff of having the, you know, you've got that recorded shot. You shot that deer, or you took that long shot and you made that shot and you want to tell your buddies. Leads me to the last thing I'll kind of talk about, and that is the distance of shooting with one of these Zuluses, or, you know, a lot of the, you know, I should say the affordable digital optics. You know, is this thing as usable at, let's say, 600 yards as an SH4? You can shoot this thing 600 yards. You can shoot at 800. You can shoot at 1,000. I'm sure you can shoot even farther. You could. But is this going to be as accurate and maybe as enjoyable as an experience as a standard optic? I'm going to go out there and say no. The digital processing in this thing, the delay, and some of the other things that are going on related to the screen inside of here and the pixels and things like that. As you zoom in, you know, this thing does have magnification, but it's digital magnification. And just like you take your telephone that you might be watching this on and you zoom in on that bald eagle in the tree, it's not a optical zoom. That digital zoom, it starts to pixelate things out. And that's what happens with these things. It does zoom in, and I've got footage out there of me zooming in some deer in the daytime and at night. And sure, you can see them. But if you're trying to point out how many points that buck has at 400 yards at dusk or dawn with this thing, it might get a bit sketchy as things get pixelated versus using the SH4 EP5 or something like that. So that is a bit of a drawback, is the quality of the view. Now, talking about the viewing, and a lot of people are always asking when they watch the footage that people put on YouTube or some other social media of these digital day-night scopes like this Zulus. In my opinion, when you look through the Zulus and you're looking at that game or that target, that rat, that deer, that bullseye, I feel it's actually a bit clearer in the optic than the recording portrays that you may be watching, or the video, I should say. I think things are a little bit clearer when you're actually viewing, is where I'm getting at. There is quite a bit of content out with these things now, which is great. Not as much content with centerfire. You know, there's tons of the air rifle stuff out there, and that's great. But not as much stuff with the centerfire. Now, I've had this thing on centerfire rifle, and I have behind me boxes of brass. Got about 3 of them back here of, shooting the 6.5 and the 308 with the Zulus. I've had no problems as far as durability, no problems with holding zero. All of that has been great. The optic itself is staying mounted on there fine. I haven't had any like random shutoffs or anything like that. And aside from working through the Ballistic software situation at longer distances, I've had no problems with it at all. It's worked great. So hey, anyway, here we go. This is my take on the Zulus and the Zulus with the laser rangefinder on it. Now this is just a regular one here. The laser rangefinder is accurate. I have confirmed that with my standard, standalone rangefinders, and I have confirmed that on a college football field as far as 100 yards. So the laser rangefinder is accurate. Some people have asked the question, when they watch the videos, you cannot see what you are ranging. Now, keep in mind, and this is just kind of a sidebar here, but the recordings that you see when I make a recording with the Zulus or anyone else does, you are not able to see all of the data, all of the information, all of the stats that the Zulus is telling you through the iBox in here. All that information does not show up on the video. For instance, the little red square that shows where the laser rangefinder is smacking on and getting that distance, that doesn't show up in the video. It'd be cool if it did, and maybe in some of the updates, more of the information that we're seeing will show up in the video. I think that would be a great thing. But as of right now, that's what's going on. So if you're wondering about that stuff. So, hey, are these good? I think so. Do they work on centerfire rifles? I think so. Are they fun to use? I think so. But do they have some drawbacks? I do think so. These things got that learning curve. You got to stay up to date on it. And there's a little bit more thought and preparation that goes into using this thing versus just taking your rifle out and going to do some shooting. You got to make sure you got your batteries. You got to make sure your batteries are charged. You remember how to turn this thing on. You got to remember how to set it up versus pulling your gun out and just shooting it. It's a little bit more, I'd say using your Zulus or your SH4 or whatnot is a little bit stress-free compared to using one of these, unless you use it all the time and you keep up and stay real familiar with it. So, hey, I hope you guys find this information informative and useful. I didn't script this thing. I didn't write down anything. Top 10 good and bad. And just kind of ramble with you guys on my impressions, the things I like and the things that I'm finding at holdups with the Arken Optic Zulus. So, hey, thanks for checking back in. Keep on shooting.